I've been trying to decide for 3 months whether I should tell this story. Not because I'm afraid people won't believe me, I stopped caring about that after the first week, but because putting it into words makes it real in a way that even living through it hasn't. Once you write something down, once you externalize it from the horror chamber of your own mind, it becomes something that exists independently from you. It becomes a thing that can be found, read, and spread. It becomes a virus. But I need to tell someone, and maybe that someone is you reading this now. Maybe you're the person who needs to know. Maybe you'll recognize something in this story that will save your life, the way that single moment in a gas station bathroom saved mine. Let me start with the most important part. Everything I'm about to tell you is true, down to details I wish weren't. I don't have explanations for what happened. I have only facts, chronology, and the scar tissue of trauma that won't quite close. It was March 15th when I left Portland. I had accepted a job in Sacramento, a 3-week contract with a marketing firm to help with a campaign relaunch. The drive should have taken me 8 hours on I-5, straight down through Oregon and into California. A boring drive, the kind where you stop once for gas and coffee, maybe grab a sandwich and arrive by early evening. I had the playlist queued, the tank full, and my apartment packed into my car like a hermit crab's shell. The first 4 hours were exactly as tedious as expected. I stopped around 2 p.m. at a sprawling truck stop outside Eugene. Used the bathroom, grabbed a Gatorade and some beef jerky, paid too much, and got back on the road. By 5:30 p.m. I was entering the California border, watching the landscape shift from the lush green of Oregon to the drier, more austere terrain of the North State. Around 6:15 p.m., with the sun dropping low and orange against the western mountains, I noticed my gas gauge was lower than I'd expected. I'd filled up completely that morning before leaving Portland, and with highway driving I should have had more fuel. I didn't think much of it. Maybe I was just misremembering, or maybe the gauge was slightly off. Either way, I'd driven through this stretch before, and I knew there was a gas station coming up in about 20 miles. The station appeared exactly where I expected it, just off the highway, a small independent place called Redwood Rest Stop. It was the kind of place that hadn't been updated since the 1980s. The pumps were weathered, the small convenience store behind them had yellowed blinds on the windows, and a single parking lot light was already flickering to life in the gathering darkness. There were no other cars there. I pulled up to pump number 3 and got out. The evening was cool, that particular chill that comes when the sun drops below the ridgeline. The air smelled like pine and something else, something vaguely metallic that I couldn't quite place. I inserted my credit card, selected regular unleaded, and started pumping while I stood there, watching the numbers climb on the pump's display. The pump clicked off at $48.32. My tank had been significantly less full than I'd thought. I was about to get back in the car when I noticed the bathroom door was propped open with a rock. I needed to use the bathroom before the long evening stretch ahead, so I decided to go inside the station first to ask about it and possibly grab another coffee or energy drink. The convenience store was dimly lit, fluorescent lights humming overhead. The shelves were sparse, more empty spaces than actual products, as if the store was slowly being starved of inventory. Behind the counter stood a man in his 60s, with gray hair pulled back in a thin ponytail and weathered skin that suggested he'd worked outdoors for decades. His name tag read Dennis. "Hey," I said, approaching the counter with a Coke and a package of peanut M&Ms. "Your bathroom door's open. Is it okay if I use it?" Dennis looked up from his phone. He had pale blue eyes that seemed to carry a thickness of concern, or perhaps just exhaustion. He studied me for a moment in a way that felt oddly personal, as if he were trying to memorize my face. "Yeah, it's open," he said slowly. "But listen, after you're done, I need to tell you something." "Okay," I said, feeling a small flutter of unease that I attributed to his strange tone. People are weird, especially in small rural towns. I'd driven through enough of them to have learned that. The bathroom was small and surprisingly clean, with flickering fluorescent lights and a mirror that had a long crack running down the center. I used the toilet, washed my hands, and took a moment to check my phone. No service, of course. I looked at my face in the cracked mirror and barely recognized myself. My eyes were tired from the drive, my hair flattened from the afternoon sun through the car window. When I came out, Dennis was waiting by the counter, still looking at me with that same intense scrutiny. "You driving south?" he asked. "To Sacramento," I said. "Got a job there." He nodded slowly, his jaw working as if he was chewing on words before deciding whether to spit them out. Finally, he leaned forward slightly, his hands flat on the counter. "There's been some trouble on the highway," he said. "Not accidents, not exactly. I mean, there have been accidents, but—" He trailed off, shaking his head. "I probably shouldn't say anything. You'll think I'm crazy." "Try me," I said, though part of me wanted to just pay for my items and leave. I was tired, eager to make time before the sky was completely dark. "There's been something happening south of here," Dennis said, lowering his voice even though we were the only two people in the store. "Over the last few weeks, maybe a month, people stop at night on this stretch of highway and they disappear." I waited, expecting him to continue, to provide details that might make this into something coherent or at least interesting in an academic way. Instead, he just looked at me and the silence stretched. "Disappear how?" I finally asked. "Car breakdowns usually," Dennis said. "Or they pull over to make a call or take a nap. They stop the car. They get out. And they don't get back in." "Do people find them?" I asked. "I mean search parties, police." "They find the cars," Dennis interrupted. "Always parked on the shoulder. Always empty. Doors locked from the inside, windows up. Keys in the ignition, sometimes the engine still running. But the people?" He shook his head. "Gone. No bodies, no signs of struggle. Just gone." I had that particular feeling that comes when you're not sure if someone is telling you the truth or if they're experiencing some kind of delusion. Dennis seemed genuinely troubled, but that didn't necessarily mean anything. Delusions can feel very real to the person experiencing them. "How many people?" I asked. "3 that I know of," Dennis said. "Maybe more. I don't know everything that happens on the highway, but 3 I know for sure. The first was about 4 weeks ago. The second about 2 weeks ago. The third was last week. A woman had a Subaru. They found her car empty, still running, lights on, at about 11 p.m. "What did the police say?" "Police are looking into it," Dennis said. "But there's nothing to find. No bodies, no ransom demands, no notes. One theory is they just walked off. Depression, a break from reality, who knows? But it's strange." "It does sound strange," I admitted. "Where are you heading?" Dennis asked. "Sacramento. I told you." "Right," he said. "You're driving through the night?" "I plan to, yeah. Get there by midnight or a little after." Dennis was quiet for a moment, and I watched the conflict play across his face. The desire to warn me battling against the fear of being seen as a lunatic. "Don't stop," he said finally, and his voice was tight with an emotion I couldn't identify. "No matter what happens, don't stop your car. Not for the next 50 miles. Don't stop." I echoed. "What do you mean? Am I in danger?" "I don't know," Dennis said, and I believed that he truly didn't. "I just know that 3 people have stopped on that stretch of road and vanished. I don't know why. I don't know what takes them. But I know that stopping is what all 3 had in common." "That doesn't mean causation," I said, falling back on logic that suddenly felt very fragile. "People could have stopped for 100 reasons. Gas stations, bathroom breaks, checking tires." "They stopped," Dennis said firmly. "And they didn't come back. You keep driving no matter what happens. No matter what you see or hear or feel. You keep your doors locked and you keep your foot on the gas until you're past mile marker 287. After that, you should be fine. It's like it's localized to this one stretch. Nothing past mile marker 287. "How do I know when I'm at mile marker 287? I asked, and the practical nature of my question seemed to frustrate Dennis. "You'll know," he said. "You'll feel different. The air will change. Trust me." I paid for my Coke and M&Ms, handed Dennis a $20 bill, and took my change. He held my hand when he passed the bills back to me, and his grip was surprisingly strong. "I'm serious," he said. "Don't stop." "I won't," I said, and I meant it in that moment, the way you mean something when someone is looking directly into your eyes and speaking with absolute conviction. "Thank you for the warning." "Just drive," Dennis said. Just keep driving. I left the convenience store and got back into my car. The light in the sky had almost completely faded now, and the stars were beginning to emerge. I pulled out of the station and merged back onto I-5 heading south toward Sacramento, toward whatever it was that Dennis believed was waiting for me in the darkness. The first 10 miles were uneventful. The highway was well lit by my headlights, and the occasional car passed me going north, their taillights disappearing quickly in my mirrors. I tried to dismiss Dennis's warnings as the rambling of someone who'd spent too many years alone at a rural gas station, but the weight of his concern had settled into my chest like a stone. I turned the music up louder. Some aggressive rock that I thought might keep me alert and grounded in normalcy. The road stretched ahead in that hypnotic way that night driving does, the white dashes of the lane markers ticking past in endless rhythm. Mile marker 265. Mile marker 266. Around mile marker 268, I began to notice something odd about the road ahead. The darkness seemed thicker somehow, less like the absence of light and more like an active presence. My headlights seemed to be absorbed by it rather than penetrating it. The few streetlights that marked the highway at intervals seemed dimmer than I'd expected, their halos of illumination smaller and more concentrated. I accelerated slightly, pushing my speed up to 75 miles per hour. The road was straight, well-maintained, and empty. I told myself I was fine, that Dennis was just someone who'd let paranoia seep into his bones from too many years of isolation. But there was something wrong with the darkness. It was at mile marker 272 that I saw the first car. It was pulled off to the side of the road on the shoulder with its hazard lights flashing. A silver Honda Civic, older model, maybe 10 or 15 years old. From what I could see in the beam of my headlights, the car appeared to be empty. Every instinct I had screamed at me to slow down and check if the driver needed help. It was what a good person would do. But Dennis's voice was in my head. Don't stop. No matter what you see. I kept driving. The car receded into my mirrors, its hazard lights blinking like a distress signal I was ignoring. I felt like a coward, but I also felt something else. A crawling certainty that stopping would be a mistake. The next 5 miles passed without incident, but my hands were gripping the steering wheel so tightly that my knuckles had gone white. The road seemed to stretch endlessly before me, the darkness absolute beyond my headlights. I was the only moving thing in the world. At mile marker 277, I heard a sound that made my heart skip. A thump, clearly coming from the back of my car. Then another. Thump, thump. I jerked my eyes to the rearview mirror, but I couldn't see anything. The road behind me was empty, just darkness and the occasional glint of pavement in the moonlight. Thump, thump, thump. No, I said aloud. No, no, no. I pressed harder on the gas pedal. My speedometer climbed to 85 miles per hour. The thumping continued, steady and rhythmic, like something in the trunk was throwing its weight against the lid. That's impossible, I thought. I have nothing in my trunk. Just the spare tire and jack. Nothing that could make that noise. Unless something got in the trunk when I was in the gas station. The horrible thought arrived fully formed. Dennis could have done it. Or someone else. No. I'd locked the car when I went inside. I'd clicked the fob. Hadn't I? The thumping stopped. The sudden silence was worse than the noise had been. At least the thumping had been a concrete thing, something I could blame on a loose piece of cargo or an exhaust problem. The silence was just the darkness being quiet. I made it to mile marker 280 before I heard the whisper. It came through the air vents, soft and sibilant, like wind through a crack in the window. But there was no crack. My windows were all closed. I couldn't make out words, just the texture of a voice. Female, I thought, though I wasn't sure. It was speaking in a language I didn't recognize, or perhaps it wasn't language at all, just the sound of someone trying to form words through an instrument not designed to produce them. Mile marker 281. I turned off the music completely. The silence inside the car pressed against me, and underneath it I could still hear that whispering voice coming through the vents. Was it getting closer? Or was it always there, and I just hadn't been quiet enough to hear it? My phone buzzed. The sudden electronic chirp made me jump violently, and for a moment I thought I was about to veer off the road. I managed to stay in my lane, hands shaking. 1 bar of service. A text message. From Dennis, though I had never given him my number. Don't look back. Don't stop. Keep driving. I stared at the message until I nearly missed the curve ahead, jerking the wheel at the last moment to stay in my lane. How had Dennis gotten my number? Why was he texting me? Mile marker 282. The whisper had stopped, and now there was a new sound, a scratching like fingernails on the window. I didn't look. I kept my eyes fixed forward, on the road, on the white lines that stretched toward Sacramento like a lifeline. My headlights flickered. The world went completely dark for half a second, and in that darkness I felt something vast and attentive, as if the darkness itself had noticed me. My headlights came back on, blindingly bright, and I saw something in the middle of the road ahead. A person, standing in my lane, arms at their sides, facing away from me. I was going 85 miles per hour. The figure in the road didn't move. I was perhaps 200 feet away and closing fast. In a handful of seconds I would hit it. My foot went to the brake. Dennis's voice, "Don't stop." I took my foot off the brake and kept the gas pedal down. 100 feet. The figure still didn't move. Now I could see it was a woman, wearing a dress that seemed too formal for the side of the highway. Her hair hung long and straight down her back. 50 feet. I clenched my teeth and closed my eyes. The impact never came. I opened my eyes as I passed through the space where she had been standing. The road ahead was empty. In my rearview mirror I saw nothing. No figure, no impact, no sign that anything had been there at all. I was shaking so badly that the car felt unstable beneath me. I forced myself to focus, to grip the wheel, to keep my breathing steady. Mile marker 283. The numbers were counting down to something, and all I could think was, Dennis said mile marker 287. Just 4 more miles. Just 4 more miles of whatever this is. The scratching returned to the windows, more insistent now, moving from driver's side to passenger's side to the back of the car. Fingernails on glass, methodical and patient, as if something were checking the seals, looking for a way in. My phone buzzed again. Another message from Dennis. "It's testing the doors now. It knows you're leaving. Drive faster." I pushed the speedometer up to 95 miles per hour. The car's engine whined in protest. Mile marker 284. A voice came through the vents again, but this time it was different. It was words, English words, but they came out distorted, as if being played backward and forward simultaneously. "Turn around, please, help me, turn around." It sounded like a woman's voice, tortured and desperate, layered over itself multiple times. "Cold, why won't you, please turn the car?" And underneath it, something else. A second voice, younger. A child's voice saying the same things, different words, all jumbled together into a chorus of pleading. "Stop!" I shouted. "Stop!" The voices stopped abruptly. The sudden quiet was absolute and total. Even the engine seemed to be running silently. Mile marker 285. 2 miles. I could see my GPS now showed only 15 minutes remaining to Sacramento. The destination was so close I could almost taste it. The thought of reaching the city with its lights and people and normalcy was the only thing keeping me from completely breaking down. Then the dashboard went dark. My speedometer, my fuel gauge, the clock, the temperature, all of it went black at once. Only the odometer remained lit, and as I watched in horror, the numbers began to spin backward. 78,452 miles. 78,451. 78,450. Faster and faster, the numbers blurring as my car drove itself backward through time. My hands were locked on the wheel at a death grip, and the road ahead was still there, still real beneath my tires. The car was still moving forward at 95 miles per hour. It was just the numbers that were lying about where I was. The odometer slowed and stopped at 0 miles. It displayed a number I shouldn't have been able to read, something that didn't make sense in decimal format. Something that looked like it was written in a language that had no business existing in a car's computer system. I tore my eyes away from it. Mile marker 286. 1 mile to go. "Come back," the voice said, and now it was clear, single and male. It came from the passenger seat, and when I dared to glance over, I saw nothing there. But the seat seemed to be creasing and moving, as if someone invisible was sitting in it, speaking directly into my ear. "Come back," it said again. "We're so lonely. It's so cold where we are. Turn around. Take us back north. Introduce us to the others." "No," I said. The word came out as a whisper. "Turn around," the voice said, "or we'll never leave the car. Ever. We'll stay with you forever. We'll get in your dreams. We'll—" Mile marker 287. The voice cut off mid-sentence as if a switch had been flipped. The scratching on the window stopped. The oppressive weight of the darkness seemed to ease slightly, and ahead of me, I could see the scattered lights of a small town. Reading, though I don't think the name matters. I don't remember the last few miles clearly. I have a vague memory of my hands being numb and my vision slightly tunneled, of passing through the edges of civilization where a Walmart and a McDonald's suddenly appeared in my headlights like proof that the normal world still existed. I pulled into a motel called the Starlight Inn and parked in the well-lit lot beneath fluorescent lights that had never seemed so beautiful. I sat in the car for a long time, hands still on the wheel, unable to trust that it was over. I didn't sleep that night, though I paid for a room and locked myself inside. I sat in a chair facing the door, my phone in my hand, scrolling through everything I could find about the disappearances Dennis had mentioned. There wasn't much. A local news article from 2 weeks ago about the woman with the Subaru, a missing persons report that had been posted online. A mention in a California news aggregator about mysterious disappearances on I-5. But nothing that confirmed Dennis's account with the specificity he'd offered. I pulled up my text messages and looked for the messages from Dennis. My phone showed nothing. No contact history, no messages received. I checked my call logs, also empty. It was as if that entire text conversation had never happened, had existed only as something I'd imagined in my panic. But I hadn't imagined it. I knew I hadn't. By morning I was a wreck. I tried to call the Redwood rest stop to speak with Dennis again, but the number I found for the gas station was disconnected. I looked it up online and found a Yelp page that hadn't been updated since 2011. There were no recent reviews, no current hours listed. I drove back north that morning against my better judgment and found the gas station empty. Not just closed, abandoned. The pumps were still there, weathered and cracked, but the convenience store windows were completely boarded up. There was no sign of Dennis or of anyone having worked there in years. A police officer found me standing in the parking lot taking photographs of the building. His name was Officer Garrett, and he seemed more concerned with why I was there than with anything else. "This place is off limits to the public," he said. "It's part of an ongoing investigation." My heart jumped. Investigation into what? "I can't discuss active cases," he said. "But I can tell you that you need to leave this property. Are you trespassing or just lost?" "I stopped here yesterday," I said. "I spoke with an attendant, a man named Dennis. I need to speak with him again." Officer Garrett's face changed. "You spoke with someone here yesterday?" "Yes. He warned me about disappearances on the highway. He told me not to stop." "Come with me," the officer said, and his tone made it clear this wasn't a request. We went to the Reading police station where I spent the next 4 hours talking to a detective named Cho. I told her everything, Dennis's warnings, the car on the side of the road, the sounds, the figure in the road, the voices. I showed her the photographs I'd taken of the abandoned gas station. The Redwood rest stop was closed in 2019, Detective Cho told me when I'd finished. The owner died in a car accident on I-5, just north of mile marker 272. The business never reopened. But someone was there yesterday, I insisted. I spoke with him. He told me about 3 disappearances. "We have had disappearances," Detective Cho said carefully, "for actually over the past month and a half. All on the stretch of highway you described, all with the same characteristics. Empty cars, no sign of struggle, no bodies found. The most recent one was 3 days ago." She pulled up files on her computer and turned it so I could see. Photographs of 4 different cars, all parked on the shoulder of I-5, all empty. A missing persons report for Margaret Lyons, 42, from Eugene. A report for Joshua Chin, 19. For Patricia Montes, 37. And for a fourth person whose name I can't quite remember now, though I've read the file multiple times. Are you missing someone? Detective Cho asked me. Is that why you're here? Did someone you know disappear? No, I said. I needed to find out if what happened to me was real. If other people experienced anything strange on that road. What exactly did you experience? She asked. I told her again all of it, and I could see the doubt growing in her eyes. I was describing something that sounded like a mental health crisis, a panic attack experienced on the road and retrospectively woven into a supernatural narrative. I don't expect you to believe me, I said, but I know what I experienced. And I know that whatever warned me about stopping whatever was there in that darkness, it was real. Detective Cho was quiet for a moment. Then she said something that changed everything. The owner of the gas station, Richard Walsh, he died in 1995, not 2019, she said, consulting her files. He was driving south on I-5 late at night when his car was found empty on the shoulder. Just like the others. The gas station changed hands several times after that, but it never really operated smoothly. The last operator closed it down in 2019 and never came back to collect his personal items. What did Richard Walsh look like? I asked, though I was almost certain I wouldn't recognize the description. Tall, thin, gray hair pulled back, Detective Cho said. He was known for being strange, for warning customers about the road. There were a few reports filed with the State Highway Patrol about a delusional gas station attendant making threatening statements to customers. Richard Walsh was interviewed, and he claimed he was just trying to help people stay safe. He's still there, I said quietly. That man in the station yesterday. He's still warning people. Detective Cho looked at me with something between pity and concern. I'm going to refer you to our counseling services, she said. What you experienced, whether it was real or not, has clearly caused you significant trauma. There's no shame in talking to someone about it. I left the police station and drove to Sacramento, 3 hours behind schedule. I completed my contract work in a daze, going through the motions of professional meetings and presentations while some part of my mind remained on I-5, in that darkness, hearing those voices. I left Sacramento on a Friday morning, taking I-80 north through the mountains rather than returning via I-5. It took me 6 hours longer, but I didn't care. I wasn't ready to go back through that stretch. When I returned to Portland, I became obsessed. I told myself it was for my own peace of mind, that I needed rational explanations for what had happened. In truth, I think I was trying to prove to myself that I hadn't imagined the entire thing. I started with newspaper archives, microfilm at the Portland Library, searching for any mention of Richard Walsh or the Redwood Rest Stop. I found the article about his disappearance. It was from 1995, a small item in the California section of an Oregon newspaper. Missing person found dead, gas station attendant's car located on I-5. The article mentioned that Richard Walsh's body had been found 2 days after his car, washed up on the banks of a river near the town of Redding. There was no explanation for how he'd traveled from the highway to the river, a distance of nearly 20 miles. The official cause of death was drowning, though some questions were raised about the extensive bruising on his body that seemed inconsistent with a simple drowning death. I found more articles about the disappearances that followed. 4 people in the past 6 weeks, all on the same stretch of highway, all with cars found empty on the shoulder. There was a small true crime podcast that had covered the story, interviewing Detective Cho and comparing the cases to other unsolved disappearances on highways across America. But it was a local history website that finally gave me the information I was looking for. The article was titled Dark History of Save 5, The Deaths of Redwood Canyon. It detailed a history of disappearances on the stretch of highway between mile markers 270 and 290 going back decades. People pulling over for rest, people having car trouble, people stopping to help others who seemed to be in distress, all vanishing without a trace. The earliest documented disappearance was in 1947. A married couple, Robert and Susan Gates, were driving south on the highway when their car was found parked on the shoulder with both doors open and the engine running. They were never found. There was a theory presented by a local historian that the disappearances might be connected to a Native American ritual site, that the area had spiritual significance for the Maidu people who had inhabited the region for thousands of years. Another theory suggested that there was a serial killer operating in the area. A third theory proposed that the area was subject to some kind of localized psychological phenomenon, mass hysteria created by the power of suggestion. But none of the theories explained anything. They just added layers of mystery to something that was already completely inexplicable. I read about the most recent disappearance, Marcus Webb, 31, who had pulled over on the shoulder to answer a phone call from his wife and was never seen again. His car was found with the doors locked and the windows up, just as Dennis had described. His phone was on the seat, still in the middle of the call, the line still connected to his wife, who had heard him say, "Why are you all looking at me?" just before the line went dead. Reading that article, I felt the hair on the back of my neck stand up. Because I realized something. I had experienced something that people in the area were calling the phenomenon. I had driven through the stretch and survived, which meant I had an experience that could only be explained by acknowledging that something genuinely paranormal was occurring on that stretch of highway. I don't know why I decided to go back. Logic would have dictated that I never return to California, never drive I-5, never venture anywhere near that stretch of road again. But I had to know if it was still there, if the phenomenon was real, or if it had somehow attached itself to me specifically. I made the drive in June, 4 months after my initial experience. This time I went in daylight, arriving at mile marker 270 at around 2 p.m. The highway looked completely normal in the afternoon sun, just asphalt and trees and the distant shapes of mountains. I pulled off at a rest area marked on my maps and parked the car in the lot. There were a few other vehicles there, families with children using the facilities, travelers grabbing lunch from the vending machines. Everything was bright and ordinary. I walked along the shoulder of the highway, looking at the asphalt, trying to see something that would explain everything. There was nothing. Just road. Just normal, boring road. But as the sun began to set and the light changed, something shifted. The darkness that gathered in the trees seemed thicker than it should be. The shadows pooled in the spaces between pine trunks like something liquid and alive. I got back in my car and drove, keeping my speed steady at 70 miles per hour. I drove from mile marker 270 to mile marker 290, all the way through the phenomenon zone, with all my windows down and my hands steady on the wheel. Nothing happened. The whispers didn't come. The voices didn't emerge from the vents. No figures appeared in the road. The darkness was just darkness. I pulled into a motel in the next town and sat in my room, trying to understand what had changed. Had the phenomenon moved? Had it recognized me and decided to leave me alone? Or had I imagined the entire first experience so completely that returning to the scene had broken the spell? At 2 a.m. my phone buzzed. A text message from an unknown number. "Thank you for coming back. We needed to see you again. We needed to know you were real." I tried to call the number back, but it didn't exist. I looked up the number online and found no registered phone line. But the message was there in my phone, time-stamped and real. I didn't sleep. I left the motel at dawn and didn't stop driving until I reached Portland. It's been 3 months since that second drive. I'm writing this now because I believe I understand what's happening on that stretch of I-5, or at least I've come to terms with what I experienced. I think the phenomenon is real. I think Richard Walsh, the gas station attendant who warned me, has been dead for nearly 30 years, and yet he's still there, still occupying that space, still trying to warn people away from something that shouldn't be approached. I think the darkness that gathers on that highway between mile markers 270 and 290 is a kind of boundary, a place where something from the other side has found a thin spot in the world, a place where the ordinary rules don't apply. I think the people who've disappeared have crossed that boundary. I don't know what happens to them after that. They might be dead. They might be trapped in some other state of existence. They might be trying to communicate with the world they've left behind through the medium of a car's ventilation system, through the voices of Richard Walsh and others like him who got stuck in that space. Most importantly, I think Richard Walsh wasn't delusional when he warned people to keep driving. I think he was a person who had been caught between worlds, given the opportunity to help others, and he's been doing it for nearly 30 years. The reason I'm writing this is simple. If you ever drive I-5 in Northern California, if you pass mile markers 270 to 290, and you see a car pulled over on the shoulder, don't stop. Keep driving. Don't investigate. Don't try to help. And if you see a figure in the road, don't brake. Don't close your eyes. Keep going. And if, by some chance, you reach a gas station and the attendant tells you not to stop driving, you believe him. Because he spent a very long time learning what's true about that piece of highway, and he's risking whatever remains of his existence to warn you. I've tried to move on with my life. I've tried to forget. But I still have the text message from the unknown number, and I still feel the presence of something reaching for me in my dreams. Sometimes I wake up smelling pine and my car doors are locked from the inside in ways I don't remember locking them. Last week I found something that made my blood run cold. I was going through my phone's photo library, and there were pictures I didn't remember taking. Photos from that first drive south, from the stretch between mile markers 270 and 290. But I hadn't taken any photographs that night. My phone had been in my cup holder and my hands had never left the steering wheel. The photos showed the road stretching ahead of me in darkness, exactly as I'd seen it. But in the background of each photo, becoming progressively clearer as the images advanced through the timeline, there were shapes. Not the figure of a woman in a dress, something else. Multiple figures standing just beyond the reach of my headlights, watching the car as it passed. They were impossibly tall, with limbs that seemed to bend at angles that shouldn't be possible. Their faces were obscured by the darkness, but I could feel their attention focused entirely on my vehicle. In the last photograph, one of them had moved. It was pressed against the passenger window, its face, if it could be called a face, inches from the glass. I could see the impression of something vast and wrong, something that existed in more dimensions than my eyes were equipped to process. I deleted the photos immediately, but I couldn't unsee them. I couldn't unknown what they'd shown me. A few days later, I received another text from the unknown number. This one was longer. We appreciated you coming back. We could feel you passing through again. We always know when it's you. You're different now. You carry part of us with you. We're very grateful for that. It means you understand. It means you're becoming like us. Soon you won't need the car anymore. Soon you'll be able to cross on your own. We'll teach you how. We'll show you the spaces between, the places where the rules don't apply anymore. You'll be with us. You'll be home. I haven't responded and I don't plan to. But the messages keep coming, sometimes several times a day, all from the same unknown number. Some are written in languages I don't recognize. Some are just strings of characters that hurt to look at, that seem to shift and rearrange themselves every time I focus on them. The worst part is that I'm starting to understand what they're saying. The meanings are bleeding into my consciousness without being translated by any language I know. It's as if the messages are being written directly into my brain, bypassing the normal processes of reading and comprehension. I've started having blackouts. Hours pass where I have no memory of what I've been doing. I'll go to sleep in my apartment in Portland and wake up in my car, parked on the shoulder of I-5 near mile marker 275, with no recollection of driving there. My fuel gauge will show that I've driven hundreds of miles, but my mind is completely blank. Last Tuesday I woke up like this and there was someone sitting in my passenger seat. It was Richard Walsh. He looked exactly as I'd imagined him, gray hair pulled back, weathered face, pale blue eyes that seemed to contain depths of sorrow and something else, something like hunger. He was smiling at me and his teeth were too white, too uniform, like they'd been painted on. "You're almost ready," he said. His voice had a strange double quality, as if multiple versions of him were speaking in perfect unison. "Another month, maybe two. You're integrating beautifully. The others will be so happy to meet you properly." I tried to scream, but no sound came out. I tried to reach for the door handle, but my hand wouldn't obey my commands. I could only sit there, frozen, while Richard Walsh explained to me what was going to happen. "The phenomenon, as you've been thinking of it, isn't a phenomenon at all," he said. "It's a door. It's always been a door. We've been here for thousands of years, waiting in the spaces between, watching the world change. When the highway was built, when that stretch was completed, we finally had the perfect conduit. A place where people travel fast, where their attention is narrowed to a single point, where they're already in a state of liminal consciousness. Perfect. Just perfect. Some people stop and we take them. Some people keep driving and we tag them, mark them for later. You were tagged the moment you refused to stop. You refused to become one of us immediately, which means you're becoming one of us slowly. It's actually better this way. A willing integration is more stable than a forced one. You'll last longer. You'll be with us for a very long time. What do you want? I finally managed to whisper. We want company, Richard Walsh said simply. We've been alone in the spaces between for so long. We want people who understand. We want people who've seen us and lived. We want you. When I woke up, I was in my car in a rest area parking lot near Salem, about 2 hours north of Portland. It was 6 a.m. and there was frost on the windshield. I couldn't tell if it had been a dream or a memory. I've decided to write this account because I believe I'm running out of time. The blackouts are becoming longer. The control I have over my own actions is slipping. Sometimes I'll look down at my hands and not recognize them. Sometimes I'll see my reflection in the mirror and there's something else looking back at me, something with my face but not my expression. I can feel them moving inside me now, these beings from the spaces between. They're teaching me their language, showing me glimpses of the world they inhabit. It's beautiful in a way that makes my brain hurt. Architectures that exist in dimensions I can't fully perceive, colors that don't have names, sounds that are also textures and tastes and emotions all at once. The worst part is that I'm starting to want to go back. I'm starting to crave that stretch of highway in a way that's become almost physical. My hands grip the steering wheel and pull toward I-5 without my conscious permission. My dreams have become more real than my waking life, and in those dreams I'm driving down that dark highway and the beings are no longer hiding. They're visible and they're beautiful and they're calling my name. I'm writing this as a warning and as a confession. If anyone reads this and recognizes themselves in this account, if you've driven I-5 between mile markers 270 and 290 and experienced something strange, if you've received texts from an unknown number, if you've found photographs you don't remember taking, you need to know that you're not alone in your experience and you're not going crazy. But you also need to know that the phenomenon is real and it's patient and it's very, very interested in you. Dennis, or Richard Walsh, or whatever name he goes by now, was telling the truth. Don't stop on that stretch of highway. Not for anything. Not for a broken down car, not for a figure in the road, not for a feeling that something is wrong. Keep your doors locked, keep your windows up, keep your eyes forward, and press the accelerator until you've passed mile marker 290. Because if you stop, or if you let them tag you, eventually you'll understand what I understand now, that the world we call normal is just a thin membrane stretched over something vast and ancient and utterly indifferent to our existence. And once you've seen the spaces between, you can never go back to believing in the solid reality of our everyday lives. The last thing I want to say is this. I'm sitting in my car right now, parked on the shoulder of I-5 at mile marker 274. I came here voluntarily tonight and I'm not entirely sure why. Part of me came here because I wanted to, but another part of me came here because something has been calling to me across the distance. I can see them now in the darkness beyond my headlights. The figures are no longer hidden. They're standing in the road waiting. Richard Walsh is among them and he's smiling. Behind them I can see the opening, the door to the spaces between, a gap in reality that's grown wider every time I've come to this place. They're asking me to turn off the engine. They're asking me to step out of the car and walk toward them. They're promising that I'll finally understand everything, that the confusion and the fear will end, that I'll finally be home. I think I'm going to do it. I think I've been waiting for this moment since that first night when Dennis warned me not to stop. Whoever reads this account, please understand, I'm not a victim anymore. I'm a volunteer. And very soon I'll be one of them. If you drive I-5 in Northern California, and you see a car parked on the shoulder around mile marker 274, with the doors hanging open and the engine running, don't stop. Don't investigate. Don't try to help the person you might see walking toward the darkness. That person is me and I'm exactly where I want to be. Keep driving. Whatever you do, keep driving.